Hello, 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 and welcome to the latest installment of And Sarah Appeared. My name is Sarah, and I'm appearing before you today because I feel serenity, and it's a different type of peace. We talk about peace, and I think peace comes in different levels. For me, I'm interpreting, this is what my soul is interpreting, this feeling that I've had. The serenity that I've been feeling has been a stillness, but it is like a heavy feeling of assurance in that peace. It's not a quiet before the storm, it's assurance in the stillness, it's assurance in the peace. A lot of the times people say, it's the calm before the storm. It's not any of that. It has been a definitely a breaking. There has been a freeing, and there's also been an understanding that what is perceived as comfort has actually been a stop in the spirit from God. I think for me, my real comfort zone has been everything that I've been dwelling in prior to 2022. 2022 and in 2023, I have been out of my comfort zone because I have effectively allowed God to be in the seat of my vehicle called life. He has been the captain of my ship. And a lot of and honestly, even with hesitation, even in the midst of disobedience, even in the midst of different things that I didn't understand, in the midst of attacks and in the midst of triumphs, God has really pulled the reins in and said, okay, I'm going to take you out of what you thought was in your control. And I'm going to be in control. And you're going to kick and you're going to scream and you're not going to understand anything. But in the midst of this, I'm going to give you relief after we unravel and come to the end of ourselves. You'll Even when it looks like you're in a one horseshoe town, even when it looks like you see the same things over and over and you're looking for something new and you're like, I don't like everything is mundane and it's routine, there is splendor that you need to find in the mundane because it is training you for the miraculous. It's training you for that. There is honestly having the time to be able to really allow God to do the surgery on my soul. And honestly, even when I kicked and bucked and was like rebellious and disobedient to God, like I still came back to him. I think that's the whole focal point of like my testimony. Like, yeah, like for me, I love God, I love Jesus. I have had moments where I've walked away, I've, gone into the occult, I've done different other things, but all paths really ended up leading to Christ. Um, and with that being said, like, I'm really rocking with the fact that he's the God of my ancestors too. Like, I know that serving Christ is right for me, but the way that I serve him is not going to look like anything that's ever been done for my in my family before. I have to be authentic. I have to serve him in my work ethic. I have to serve him in my faith. I have to serve him in my like I have to serve him like in my boldness. I have to rely on him. And I have to not only do that, but I have to allow him to open and expand my mind to the different avenues and aspects of who he is, because it's not going to look like any one way. It's not going to look traditional. It's not going to look like what my family has always been doing. It's not. For me, what it looks like is it is going to look like meditation. It is going to look like working on my breath, and it is going to look like me reading and studying about myself and staying in his presence. It is going to look loud and like I'm doing too much. It's going to look like that. It is going to look like me having to preserve my body because there's a greater understanding or a deepened understanding that I have to be on perseverance spiritually because of what I carry. It's going to be off color, off beat. And that's honestly coming to that conclusion and coming to just that statement alone is freeing for me. And a lot of people, like when you've always, I would say this, when there's always been a like a framework, a demonic framework against your authenticity. And you'll know this because every time you speak out, you're made to feel small. Or anytime you go into a certain arena or you're trying to accomplish something, it's like there's not quite, there's always a hit and miss. When you're unsure about yourself, when you're unsure about, you know, your decisions or what you want to go towards, it's really you being unsure about who you are. That's why it's important to go through the hard stops. Some people have the grace where they don't even know who they are and they're still going for it and they're still doing it. And that's great. I love that for them because that's a part of their journey and that's how they get through and learn things. With others who are more stubborn and hard-headed like me on this side of the spectrum, God has to give you a hard stop. He has to give you a hard stop and he has to really pause you and he has to say, I'm going to get you through this. I'm going to break all of this off of you. I'm gonna take care of all of this and I'm gonna bring you to a clean slate. But in order for me to do that, it's gonna have to be a dirty cycle. You're going to see parts and aspects of yourself that are just as ruthless and low down and human as the things that you judge your very family for. You're gonna see that you have those same things in you and that those things are gonna have to come out of you, and it's going to seem like it's going to be at the expense of your own detriment, but really it's at the expense of your destiny. See, what happens is you've got to accept all of the unpleasantness that is within you before you can even flash the light or put a scope or a lens on what's unpleasant or what you perceive to be unpleasant about factors outside of you. Once you do that, you see things through different lenses. It's like a filter. You can always change the filter. The Holy Spirit will allow you to see things through a filter of mercy. He'll allow you to see things through a filter of compassion. He'll allow you to see things through a filter of godly anger. He'll allow you to see things through a filter of justice. He'll allow you to see things through the scope of, I really do understand um, what you're going through and what you mean. And it's real empathy and not like, you know, any kind of false pity or any kind of pity that you'll have for anyone. It's real empathy because you'll be able to understand, like, I got it. I see what you're saying now. I see what's going on with you now. I see how, I see what you're talking about. This is a real issue. When you're not caught up in the motions and the roller coaster of what's going on in that distraction. Sometimes your distractions are necessary and they can work for you. For me, being a distraction and having distractions were necessary to detour me into the hard stop. The hard stop is not a comfort zone. It's not even a pocket of safety. The hard stop, when it happens through God, through the Holy Spirit, is actually an unraveling of all the things that you thought you were in control of, and understanding how silly you are to think that I could ever do God's job. A lot of the things that God is doing, a lot of the things that you're doing are the things that you should be surrendering. But when you're doing everything and you're trying to keep everything on an about face, and you're not living in your truth and your authenticity, you're not living in who you are, you're not living in how God made you to be, trusting in your gifts, trusting in um, your intuition, trusting in what God says about you. When you're not living in that, you're putting yourself in an energetic chokehold. So everything that was already lined up to come up against you, you're coming into agreement with those weapons prospering. Yeah, they form, but you're coming into agreement with them prospering. Um, I've been uncomfortable all year, and it's going to get even more uncomfortable, and I welcome it. I welcome it. I have the things that I've been unlearning, the things that I've been allowing God to sift through, as painful as they've been and as public as they've been. I'm not just doing it for me. I'm not just doing it for me. We don't have to live in generational confusion and traditions of lackluster. We don't have to do that. We can come out of agreement with it. You could be anywhere in the world right now, and it may look like you're not doing anything, but if you're having those critical conversations with God, with yourself, with community, and when you're shining a light on what is really wrong with you internally. And when I say wrong, I'm not speaking down to the truths and the traumas that anyone has experienced. When I say wrong, I'm talking about what are the things that you react to that are counterproductive to your growth. That's what wrong is. Like how you react, respond, and how you perceive things that can be counterproductive to hearing the voice of God, seeing the vision of God for your life, or even staying in the flow and in the currency and in the frequency of God. Like, that's what a wrong is. That's what unrighteousness is. Unrighteousness is not just what you do in acts, it is what you do not allow God to have control over on the inside of you. So if you have to journal, if you have to go to counseling, if you have to lay down, if you have to cry it out, if you have to process it, do whatever you have to do, but do it in the flow of God. Do it in the flow of keeping God first. Because there are times in your life where you are not going to have it together, and there is going to be a lapse spiritually, mentally, and emotionally where you feel like, I can't go on, I can't do this anymore. You have to stay in the presence of God. It's the only thing that's kept me sane with everything that's been going on, I finally got a breakthrough when I stayed consistent with being in his presence and understanding where the illusion and where the manipulations and where the self-sabotage and where the where did I get things wrong and where did I get things right. And the epiphany that I came to was the reason why there was so much resistance on my end and the reason why there was so much hesitation is because I was always supposed to be in surgery, getting off of the table and stopping God from doing the surgery. And sometimes it wasn't me that was stopping God. The enemy will try to come in and disrupt your spiritual surgery. So, what some people may say, you're not doing anything, or you're staying comfortable, or you're playing it small, it's not. It's not that you're not doing anything. You're in a spiritual surgery or in a spiritual comatose. You are allowing God to take out every infectious thing that is inside of you in order to make you whole again. And there's going to be cuts and bleed outs. You may need a entire heart, liver, lung transplant. Who knows? But there's something old that has to be taken out in order for something new to come in. And that's going to cause your heart to get cracked open. That's going to cause your chest to get cracked open. That's going to cause an ugly scar to be formed. But it's going to make you so much better in the end. So a lot of people will say you're sleeping on yourself. But as long as you know that you're in the presence of God and that you are allowing Him to give you the blueprint. But before He gives you the blueprint, He's got to put you underneath. He's got to do the surgery. You might have a glimpse of the blueprint. You may have an x-ray of what's going on. You may be going through some diagnostic tests. You may be going through something that is critical in order for you not to be in a critical condition later on. And sometimes the impact of life can have you in such a critical condition that God has to be able to resuscitate you. He has to be able to pull you back in. He has to be able to perform in your life in ways that you would never even imagine. When you're in surgery spiritually, you can't see the doctor performing, but he's there. You can't see the physician doing what he's doing, but he's there. All you know is, I'm out of it. I don't know whether I'm coming or going. I don't know whether to sink or swim. I don't know. I'm out of it. I'm underneath. That's what it's like when you're really allowing God to do a work in you. And on the other side of that is recovery. And recovery is a beast itself. Because if anyone has ever gone through any major medical change in their life or any kind of major medical um, operation, whether it stemmed from an illness or whether it stemmed from giving birth, whatever you've gone through, um, there's a recovery process. And sometimes in recovery, it looks like you're sitting in one spot. Nothing's happening, nothing's moving. I'm doing the same thing over and over and over again. You have to change your perspective. You have to know, I'm not stuck. It's not a time loop. It's not a warp. I didn't settle. No, I'm learning how to walk again. I'm learning how to talk again. For me, I'm learning how to find my true authentic voice, but I'm also learning how to love again. I'm learning how to love myself. I'm learning how to love myself in the midst of coming to the terms that I really did mishandle myself. There were, for years, times where I played myself. I was funny acting with myself. I was iffy with myself. I didn't stand 10 toes down for myself. And in return, those bad behaviors landed me in a spiritual comatose. And God being the great, Jesus being the great physician that he is, had to come in and cut me up. He wasn't cutting me up because of tarot card readings. He wasn't cutting me up because of smoking marijuana. He wasn't cutting me up because, you know, my sexual prowess or wanting to, you know, act out on certain things. That's not why he was cutting me up. He was cutting me up because I abandoned myself. He was cutting me up because there were things outside of me that wanted to poison and taint my destiny. And I was subconsciously coming into agreement, allowing the weapons that were formed to be able to prosper. He had to cut me up to take out every um, soulish, fleshly, low vibrational thinking that I had about myself. He had to cut me up because I really didn't believe that he loved me. He had to cut me up because I was so much in fear of something going wrong, and I was so much in fear of being abused because I was used to it, that I would change and shapeshift in order to appease. He was cutting me up because I wasn't being the authentic warrior that I am. Being a warrior is not always about reacting, and it's not always about speaking. But there are times where if you have muzzled yourself for so long and not been able to speak and say what it is that you need to say, that a lot of the times you will detonate incorrectly instead of coming correctly. And sometimes that detonation, that bomb, that explosion of emotions is the very thing that you need to wake you up. It landed you in a spiritual comatose. He did the surgery on you, and now the breakthrough is not getting up off the table and running, shouting hallelujah to the high hills. The breakthrough is not getting up off the table and eating your favorite ice cream. The breakthrough is not getting up off the table and everybody surrounding you and cheering you on. Sometimes the breakthrough is getting up out off of the table and still being busted up and bruised, but still being alive. And now you have to go into rehab to learn how to walk and talk again. Even the breakthrough after the surgery is not going to look pretty. And it's also going to look like you're just sitting in one spot. It looks like you're comfortable because some of the scars are gone. The bandages are off. The neck brace has been removed. It looks like you're comfortable. It looks like you're not doing anything. It looks like you're not moving. But really, you're in a spiritual rehab where you have to learn little small movements that actually make a big leap into your progress. The detonation and the explosion was not at your detriment, but it really was for your destiny. So when you're in a mode where you feel like nothing is happening, I've had rejections and failures. I didn't respond to things properly. I don't trust myself. I'm in fear, and I have a lot of anxiety and things that are going on, and why do I have to do so much to maintain who I am? Why do I have to go to therapy, and why do I have to take the supplements, and why do I have to go out and run in the hills to keep my mind refreshed, and why do I have to go on the hikes, and why do I have to do that, to do the things other people don't have to necessarily do in order to get through? Why do I have to constantly be crying and getting in the face of God? And why do I always have to, why me? Why does it take so much to be me? And the truth of it is, the reason why it takes so much to be you is because you carry so much that has been untapped. Why am I always going through opposition? I never can have any friends. I never have this. I never have that. It may be something outside of you from the realm of the spirit that is influencing what's going on with you negatively, but we don't focus on what's going on outside of us. It is important to have an awareness that it is a real thing and it really has happened, and there are workers of iniquity that actually have spheres of influence in the realm of the spirit. That's a real thing. Okay, be done with that. You're aware of it, but it's not your focus. Your focus in going back into it is, why is it so hard to be me? And the truth is, you don't know how to surrender. And you haven't given yourself permission to stop explaining yourself to the world. Because the truth is, God doesn't ask you for an explanation. He doesn't need one. He made you how you are, because all of the things that people see as lackluster, all of the things that people see as comfort, all of the things that people see as, you're just sitting, you're not doing anything. The tiny movements, steps, and exercises, literally, your prayer time and being in the presence of God, all of those things are steps to your healing. And it's not only steps, but it's strides, it's leaps, and it's bounds. You've got to go through it. You've got to do the work. And it's okay if it looks like doing the work is going to therapy. It's okay if it looks like doing the work is stopping all of your activities, turning off your electronics, and really just sitting with yourself in quietness and stillness. It's okay. That is part of the process. Everybody's process is different, but everybody is not carrying the same thing. What you carry is at high risk. And because it's so precious, you cannot operate in the same way that everybody else operates. And you need to stop apologizing for it. You are not made like how everyone else is made. And you need to stop apologizing for it, because God doesn't disassociate himself with you. He knows about what you do. He knows about our addictions. He knows about when we backslide. He knows about when we are not necessarily operating in his image. Does that make him change his mind about us? No. So why are we changing our minds about ourselves? The biggest bag that you could ever fumble is the bag of your authenticity. Bye for now.